I've never understood how all these car makers are going to fulfill all their promises for EV vehicles and the demand that they're talking about seeing. Are there automakers out there today that are announcing EV production promises that have zero hope of fulfilling those promises?
I think it's going to be quite challenging for a lot of the automakers kind of coming into this a bit late. The market is making a dramatic shift. The demand shift toward EVs is phenomenal to see. It's inspiring to see. But securing enough supply of both batteries and all the components that go into them is going to be quite challenging. I think we may see a version of the semiconductor shortage, kind of a 2.0 version of that coming in a few years as so many new automakers ramp up their EV production.
In this video, Tesla co-founder JB Straubel, an absolute legend, has a dire warning for an impending disaster in the automotive industry. And spoiler alert, this is a disaster that can no longer be avoided. It's like watching a slow motion train wreck in progress. The good news is this won't negatively affect Tesla. The bad news is that practically every other automotive company, both legacy and new EV startup, is going to get completely reamed. Those who will suffer the worst, in my opinion, are the likes of Ford, General Motors and Volkswagen, and it seems like the stock market is completely oblivious to this impending doom. This video will age exceptionally well. Check back in 5, 7, 10 years time and we'll see exactly how things play out. So with that said, let's get into the video. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoy these videos, there's a bunch of ways you can support the channel, access exclusive content and perks, and get some free stocks and crypto. Check out the links in the pinned comment below. You can get 2 free stocks with WeBull, a free stock with Stake, free Bitcoin with Coinbase, and free Bitcoin with BlockFi, and the BlockFi Bitcoin Rewards credit card. You can also pick up some Tesla, Elon, and investment themed merch in the merch store. If you want to take it to the next level, join thousands of members on Patreon to gain exclusive access to over 100 Q&A videos, loads of exclusive content, exclusive access to my up-to-date 10-year Tesla stock price targets, and even access my Tesla valuation model at the investor support level and above. So check out the links in the pinned comment below, and thanks for your support.
Welcome back to First Move, and heading straight into the fast lane, the popularity of electric cars is surging like never before. One study suggests battery electric vehicle sales will reach a market share of 60% in Western Europe alone by 2030.
Every time I hear estimates about EV adoption, it doesn't matter who's published them unless it's Tony Seba, way off the mark, massively underestimating how quickly this change happens. Now, for those of you that don't know your geography, Western Europe is the wealthier side of Europe versus Eastern Europe. Generally speaking, Western Europe is going to be far further ahead with electric vehicle adoption, all other things being equal. I'm here to tell you that in Western Europe, electric vehicle sales as a percent of new vehicle sales will be well in excess of 80, 85, 90+% by 2030. And when I'm right, the dire warning from JB Straubel has even more profound implications, particularly for legacy automotive companies. What we can see on screen right now is EV adoption from 2011 to 2021. The 2021 is an estimate, but it's going to be pretty close to the mark. We've also got a trend line showing the exponential increase here. In the early days, it didn't really look like EVs were going anywhere, but that's the nature of exponential growth. Suddenly we have a huge explosion. Below are my own estimates plus the actual data from 2021 all the way out to 2035. Obviously, this isn't going to be perfectly accurate. I don't have a time machine or a crystal ball, despite my past predictions suggesting otherwise. But this is going to be the general trend. And I don't really care about 100% EV adoption. The mark to focus on is the 80% mark, because that's a real saturation point. That's a Pareto distribution. The period between around 20% to 80% adoption is the really steep part of the S-curve. We can see that taking off here. In my opinion, this happens over around a 5-year period. By 27, 28 globally, I'm expecting around 80% of new vehicles sold to be electric. There's going to be a long tail after the 80% mark. The key period of adoption, in my opinion, for EVs is around 24 to 2028. That 5-year period is where we go from around 20% to around 80% of new vehicles sold being electric. None of these forecasters seem to be factoring in exponential growth. As I've covered a million times, this isn't about consumer preferences anymore. This is about economics. Within a year or two, at most, the cost of an internal combustion engine vehicle with comparable range, etc., to an electric vehicle will be more expensive, and the price of EVs will continue to plummet thereafter. As I've said in the past, you'll literally need to be a moron as a consumer to choose to buy an inferior, more expensive product that also pollutes over an EV at that point in time. And yes, there are morons out there. That's why advertising works. But I'd like to think there aren't that many morons out there. Now, what's going to happen in the meantime is legacy automotive manufacturers will see their ICE vehicle volumes plummet, and they're not going to be able to fill the gap with EV sales. Luckily, there is a company out there known as Tesla who's aiming to get to 20 million electric vehicles by the end of the decade, which will fill in the hole. Even if the world's 2 largest automotive manufacturers, Volkswagen and Toyota, went bankrupt and stopped producing any vehicles, At their peak, they were doing around 10 million vehicles per year. Tesla would be able to fill that gap entirely. And just to be super clear regarding my EV adoption rates, I am actually assuming that the global automotive market contracts fairly dramatically over the next few years before continuing to expand and then ultimately going well beyond its previous peak. The reason for this, supply chain constraints, which we're going to talk about more in a moment.
The key word there actually was battery and making sure the supply of key metals like cobalt and lithium can meet demand. In fact, a study by Linklaters suggests up to $45 billion may need to be invested in mining capacity by 2025 just to meet the demand of EV vehicles. JB Straubel is working to meet those demands. He's the Tesla co-founder and is now the CEO of Redwood Materials, which recycles lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles, among other things. JB, fantastic to have you on the show. You know, when I read what you guys are doing, I had a hallelujah moment because I've never understood how all these car makers are going to fulfill all their promises for EV vehicles and the demand that they're talking about seeing without seeing more mining in some of the least stable parts of the world. You have a solution.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and I really do believe that this can be a key part of the solution for how we'll meet the supply chain needs for all of these new electric vehicles and batteries.
Are there automakers out there today that are announcing EV production promises that have zero hope of fulfilling those promises without a fundamental change in what we're doing, whether it's more recycling or more mining, as we've suggested? What's your view?
Stay tuned for the most understated response of all time.
Are there automakers out there today that are announcing EV production promises that have zero hope of fulfilling those promises?
I think it's going to be quite challenging.
Any body language experts in the house? It seems to me like JB Straubel there with a little bit of a sideways glance, trying to search for the right way to respond to this without coming out and directly saying it. Allow me to translate. When JB said it's going to be quite challenging and had a bit of a chuckle, I personally think what JB Straubel was thinking there was the legacy automotive manufacturers are all completely and utterly fucked, and it's their own fault. They were way too slow to act, and now they're going to be paying the price. But you can't go out and say that as a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company trying to help these companies with battery recycling before they ultimately go bankrupt. Anyway, Kenya, allow me to paraphrase JB Straubel from an interview last year when talking about legacy automotive manufacturers securing supply to actually have the batteries to build the vehicles they're promising. He said that he believes they haven't done the math, and I tend to agree here. And this is one of those beneath the surface things that won't really become evident until these companies start falling massively short of their production goals for electric vehicles and eventually explain there's demand, but we're morons and we didn't secure supply chain, materials, etc. and now we can't get enough battery cells and therefore we can't make enough vehicles. And at the same time, Tesla's still going to be scaling at a phenomenal rate. Everyone will start to ask the question, how come Tesla's got the battery cells and you guys don't? What's going on? Legacy automotive companies won't really have a credible answer in my opinion. Tesla saw the future. In fact, they're creating the future, knew there'd be insane demand for electric vehicles, and have done their absolute utmost to secure supply for as long as possible with huge long-term supply contracts for materials and parts from everyone they possibly can, and they've been doing this for years.
I think it's going to be quite challenging for a lot of the automakers kind of coming into this a bit late. And, the market is making a dramatic, shift. The demand shift toward EVs is phenomenal to see. It's inspiring to see. But, securing enough supply of both batteries and all the components that go into them is going to be quite challenging. I think we may see a version of the semiconductor shortage, kind of a 2.0 version of that, coming in a few years as so many new automakers ramp up their EV production.
Chip shortage version 2.0, another massive understatement. Now, just to give a little bit of context further into the interview, I noticed the anchor there, Julia Chatterley, gets a little bit excited. Oh, JB, you've got the solution, battery recycling, that'll solve their problems. The key here is no, it won't solve their problems, and the way that JB responds is very telling. It's part of the solution. But even knowing that Redwood Materials are scaling massively and providing battery recycling, JB is still aware that this isn't going to solve the problem. Legacy automotive companies who are planning to be producing many millions of electric vehicles by mid this decade, they haven't done the math, they haven't built the supply chain, they haven't secured the materials, and they're going to have massive shortages. They will not be able to deliver on their promises even if consumers want to buy their vehicles. And this pain will be purely self-inflicted. They deserve everything that's coming. It's not just that they're dumb and slow and didn't see what was happening and didn't act fast enough years ago. It's that still today, they're massively underestimating how quickly this change happens. They're still not doing enough.
Okay, so you saw this, and as I mentioned in the introduction, you were working at Tesla. You went full-time at Redwood Materials from 2019. Just explain what you guys are doing more precisely and where your operations stand today.
Well, Redwood Materials is a sustainable battery materials company. So, we focus on building a closed loop ecosystem for lithium-ion batteries. Simply put, we recycle old lithium-ion batteries, of all different types, both automotive, but also consumer electronics or lawnmowers. We take the materials out of those batteries, refine them, extract them, and then remanufacture them into new components that can go directly back into battery manufacture.
So you can recover more than 95% of the critical materials from the recycled batteries, so lithium, copper, nickel, cobalt, which sounds great, but how much of the battery then that you use is made of recycled parts? Like what's that percent that's passed on effectively?
Well, batteries are amazing because they are so recyclable. As you said, more than 90% of the materials, those critical materials in the battery, can be reused many, many times without degradation. Today, the batteries that we buy and put into our products admittedly have still a pretty small recycled material content, but this is changing fast. And I think people are really realizing the benefits of having a high recycled material content, both in terms of the environmental footprint of the batteries, but also the cost of those materials.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say, so what percent of batteries that are created today is recycled material, and where do you see that percentage going? Because to your point, surely this is going to be a critical piece of bringing the costs down and making electric vehicles more accessible to the masses.
Yeah, today that percentage is very small. I would say single-digit percent at best for batteries across the board. We're demonstrating and showing that you can make batteries that have very high percentage, though, and still have extremely good performance, exceptional life. So I see this eventually, going to be the vast majority of the materials. They're going into batteries that will be recycled in the future.
JB's right. This is a huge opportunity, and just for the record, this is going to take time. But cast your mind into the future. Eventually, there'll be enough batteries in circulation on Earth in various countries for various products that there'll be no longer a need to mine materials. Essentially, all the raw materials required for battery cells will be able to come from recycled products. If you can't put two and two together here, the opportunity in front of Redwood Materials is gigantic.
And what's that going to mean for price, JB?
Well, I think this is, one of the key reasons to do this. Normally people think of recycling as a sustainability and environmental solution, which it is, but it also can dramatically reduce the price of those materials. It's cheaper for us today, even at these small scales, to recycle and reuse those materials.
This is a stunning, mind-blowing fact, and that today, Redwood Materials, still a tiny operation in the scheme of things. Remember, the battery recycling industry is a speck compared to what it's going to grow into. The materials that they're recovering from recycling batteries at this tiny scale are cheaper than mining those same materials from the earth today. This means over the long term, the costs are going to plummet. This is going to have an outsized impact on the cost of batteries in the future. The materials in the battery cells make up the vast majority of the cost of the batteries, and the batteries are the most expensive component in electric vehicles. Man, I wish Redwood Materials was a publicly traded company so I could invest.
So over time, I'm confident this can be one of the biggest cost reduction levers, for new lithium-ion batteries as recycling becomes a larger percent of their materials.
Elon Musk once said that without you, Tesla wouldn't exist. Is he being kind, or is that correct?
Well, I mean, Tesla was an amazing adventure. I had such a fun time there helping build everything with the team, but it is a wonderful team. And part of the joy of being there for so long, was the caliber of the engineers and the people that made up that group. I still root for the Tesla team every single day. I love the mission. I love the company. I think we all need to root for them for the sake of the planet and the future. But I am excited now to work on problems and solve what I think is really a foundational problem for the whole electric ecosystem, broader than even just Tesla. These things need to get figured out if we're to transition to those high percentages you mentioned at the beginning.
I know. I was only asking because I was going to ask you whether he's promised to give you all his recycling business over the next 10 to 15 years, as some of these Teslas require battery replacements.
Well, we're happy to help and work on any different kinds of vehicles, whether it's a Ford vehicle or Tesla battery or a consumer battery. They can all be recycled in a very similar way.
Yeah, the opportunities are broad here. What about the costs of doing this, JB? What's the path for you guys to profitability, and how much are you investing at this stage? Because surely some part of this as well is ramping up your operations, and it is early days.
It is a big investment. We're investing several billions of dollars into both our recycling operations and also our manufacturing operations to remake those battery components out of the materials.
It kills me that I can't invest in Redwood materials. As I said in a video published over a year ago, late in 2020, this is easily a 100x company. The opportunity is absolutely phenomenal. I'm dying that I can't invest. Oh well, these numbers are absolutely bananas, investing many billions of dollars in scaling up their operation. The opportunity is absolutely enormous. I think people are really underestimating this. I think Redwood Materials is going to be one of the most exciting growth stories beside Tesla over the next decade.
And that's necessary to fully close the loop on these materials. However, as you noted, the investments that have to go into mining new materials are really significant. So unfortunately, there's no really free pathway through this. It's going to take new capital and investments, whether it's into recycling and remanufacturing, as well as into new mining capacity and facilities.
A lot of the battery manufacturers at this point in time, at least, are based in China, Japan, South Korea, for example. How do you see that shifting too? Because particularly as we're talking about more electric vehicles in the West, in Europe, in the United States, do we see some of that reshored, the battery production? Because this is also going to be a critical element, I think, in who is most able and focused on the recycling aspect of this too.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I do believe that we will see more of that supply chain spreading out globally and being a bit more diverse. It has grown obviously from within Asia, and that's where a lot of those industries started and matured. But as the world overall shifts toward electrification, we have to diversify that supply chain. Just the cost and the environmental impact of moving those materials, all around the world from Asia is quite extreme. It also creates a lot more disruption possibilities and risk. So, a key part of this, and I think recycling does enable this, is using the resources that are already brought to those countries and regions where the demand is, and reusing them in the same location, so that once we make a battery in North America, we can keep those materials in North America.
Yeah, and it ensures your supply chain too, not just for the materials, but access to the products as well.
A little bit of food for thought, since I know 99% of the people watching this channel own Tesla stock. Over the long term, what do you think is more likely? Tesla will outsource battery recycling to a company like Redwood Materials, or Tesla will vertically integrate battery recycling into their own operations? If you're familiar with Tesla, the company, you'll probably have a very strong intuitive answer to this question. And if Tesla does ultimately begin battery recycling in-house and scale up that operation, what are the odds they'll become so good at it that eventually other companies will want to use Tesla's battery recycling service as well? Something to consider. Just to recap this video, JB Straubel very low key in his responses, but the message is quite clear. Legacy automotive manufacturers who are promising huge numbers of EVs by 2025, 2030, etc. are in big trouble because, as JB said in a previous interview, they haven't done the math. Writing a press release saying you're going to have 42 different models of electric vehicle tomorrow is one thing. Actually securing the materials, building out the supply chain, having the parts, the processes, logistics in place to deliver on these vehicles is an entirely different matter. If we read between the lines, here's my prediction. Global automotive sales collapse over the next few years before rebounding in the later half of this decade. That's going to be a combination of collapsing ICE sales because they're more expensive and nobody wants to buy them. And in addition, there's going to be huge constraints on batteries, cells, therefore batteries, therefore electric vehicles. It's going to be a double whammy. However, Tesla had the foresight, the brains, and the wisdom to realize that they'd need to lock in supply over a long period of time. So while we're seeing collapsing automotive sales overall, Tesla is going to be there to clean up the mess and eat everyone's lunch. And speaking of Tesla, after their blowout December numbers from China, I'm updating my Tesla valuation model and price target. So if you don't already have access to those exclusively on Patreon, hit the card in the corner or the link in the pinned comment. The update to my Tesla price targets and valuation model will be coming in the next couple of days. See you guys in the next video. I'm Stephen Mike Ryan. This is Solving the Money Problem, and I love you all. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoy these videos, there's a bunch of ways you can support the channel, access exclusive content and perks, and get some free stocks and crypto. Check out the links in the pinned comment below. You can get 2 free stocks with WeBull, a free stock with Stake, free Bitcoin with Coinbase, and free Bitcoin with BlockFi, and the BlockFi Bitcoin Rewards credit card. You can also pick up some Tesla, Elon, and investment themed merch in the merch store. If you want to take it to the next level, join thousands of members on Patreon to gain exclusive access to over 100 Q&A videos, loads of exclusive content, exclusive access to my up-to-date 10-year Tesla stock price targets, and even access my Tesla valuation model at the investor support level and above. So check out the links in the pinned comment below, and thanks for your support. And if you're still watching, you're awesome. I read every single comment on this channel and I really appreciate your feedback. So if you've got any thoughts on today's video, questions, comments, or suggestions for a new video, let me know in the comments below. Check the cards on screen now to browse the merch store, join Patreon, or watch the next video.